Weak narratives are surprisingly common and easy to spot. They rely on vague phrasing such as "controls are in place" or "processes are reviewed regularly," giving the illusion of completeness without substance. They omit key details like frequency, responsible owner, and specific systems or tools used. They often reference policy documents instead of describing the process itself, forcing auditors to infer how compliance is achieved in practice. The absence of measurable outcomes, no metrics, timestamps, or escalation steps makes them untestable. A weak narrative is like a foggy window. You sense something is behind it, but you can't see enough to confirm what's really there. A strong narrative follows a predictable and disciplined structure that turns that fog into focus. The simplest formula, actor, action, object, frequency, ensures the core process is unambiguous. For example, the security analyst reviews firewall change requests weekly using the SIM dashboard, instantly answers who, what, and how often. Adding the evidence source and verification criteria transforms a process description into an auditable control. It might end with "results are logged in ServiceNow and approved by the network lead within 2 business days." The best narratives end with measurable criteria, such as no more than 1 overdue ticket per quarter, which define performance expectations and enable consistent testing. Consider a weak control statement, often found in early-stage SOC2 programs. Access is reviewed regularly for appropriateness. On the surface, it sounds acceptable. It acknowledges review and intent. But it fails every sufficiency test. There is no frequency, regularly could mean quarterly or annually, no identified owner, no reference to how the review is performed, and no hint of where the evidence resides. The auditor reading this line will inevitably ask, who does this? How often? What does the review entail? How is it documented? Each missing detail generates rework and uncertainty, delaying audit timelines and eroding trust in the program's maturity. Now contrast that with a strong, refined version. The IT Operations Manager reviews all privileged access accounts quarterly using exported IAM reports, documenting approvals and removals in Jira. In one sentence, it defines the actor, IT Operations Manager, action, reviews, object, privileged accounts, frequency, quarterly, and evidence source, IAM reports with Jira records. It is testable, an auditor can request the IAM export and match it to Jira tickets, and it maps directly to Trust Services Criteria, CC6 and CC7 for logical access. The difference between the two statements is more than grammar. It's the difference between compliance rhetoric and verifiable control operation. Consistency across the entire control library strengthens credibility. Each narrative should follow a parallel phrasing style so auditors can navigate easily from one control to another without relearning the format. Templates enforce brevity and structure, keeping each narrative within 1 or 2 sentences that convey action, frequency, and verification. Terminology should align with SOC 2's Trust Services criteria to ensure mappings remain clear. When ownership, tools, or frequencies change, narratives must be promptly updated. Stale descriptions are as damaging as missing ones. Consistency creates rhythm, making your controls read like a coordinated system rather than a patchwork of individual efforts. The life cycle of a narrative follows a defined governance path. The control owner drafts the statement, compliance reviews it for alignment with internal policies and frameworks, and a final QA ensures clarity and testability before approval. Each narrative should include metadata such as version number, last review date, and approver name. Approved narratives are stored in a version-controlled repository, allowing auditors to see how the control evolved over time. This life cycle ensures that every statement has been reviewed for accuracy and remains traceable to accountable owners, a core expectation of mature SOC 2 programs. Evidence references give narratives their power without cluttering them. Instead of embedding screenshots or raw data, the narrative should reference systems, dashboards, or reports where evidence resides. For instance, results are stored in Splunk under Index Security Audit, or approvals are tracked in ServiceNow Ticket Queue SR Access Review. Linking to repository IDs or ticket numbers ensures that evidence can be found consistently during audit testing. What matters is traceability. The auditor must be able to start from the narrative, locate the evidence, and verify it without detective work or assumptions. Alignment between control intent and narrative content is another hallmark of strength. Each narrative should clearly support the specific risk it addresses and the trust services criterion it fulfills. If a control is meant to ensure data availability, the narrative should reference monitoring, redundancy, or failover, not access reviews or encryption. Overlapping or redundant narratives should be identified and consolidated to prevent confusion and over-testing. Maintaining justification notes for complex mappings, such as when one control supports multiple criteria, helps auditors understand the logic behind inclusion. Intent alignment guarantees that every control contributes directly to the system's stated commitments. A clarity checklist helps authors evaluate whether a narrative is audit-ready. Does it identify a clear actor responsible for execution? Is the frequency of action defined, daily, weekly, quarterly? Does it reference the system or tool used, avoiding vague terms like appropriate system? Are the outcomes explicitly stated, approval, escalation, or documented closure? Strong narratives also explain how exceptions are handled. If discrepancies are found, the owner opens a remediation ticket in Jira within 5 business days. These details remove ambiguity, giving auditors confidence that the control's execution can be reperformed and validated independently. Automation within narratives reflects modern control operations. Many activities once performed manually now occur automatically through scripts or dashboards. A narrative might read, "The vulnerability management platform automatically scans production hosts weekly. Results are reviewed by the security team and tracked in the vulnerability dashboard." Here, automation performs the control, but human oversight ensures exceptions are handled. Referencing system logs or dashboards as control performers clarifies the automation boundary. It also shows how automation reduces human error and enforces consistency, traits auditors reward with positive commentary in their final reports. Each narrative should connect naturally to sampling and testing. Defining the population and time frame helps auditors know exactly what to test. Sample 5 of 20 weekly reports from Q1 is far better than review reports. Documenting expected evidence for each sample item, such as a specific export file or approval record, removes subjectivity from testing. Where controls require multiple data points, like 2 approvals or 3 logs, this must be stated explicitly. The ultimate goal is reproducibility. The auditor should be able to perform the same test, obtain the same evidence, and reach the same conclusion using only the narrative and linked records. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Cross-referencing frameworks within control narratives helps organizations maintain consistency across multiple compliance obligations. A single control may satisfy several frameworks, SOC 2, ISO 27001, and NIST 800-53. But without cross-mapping, the connections become invisible. Adding tags or identifiers to each narrative, such as SOC 2-CC 6.1/ISO-A.9.25, provides traceability across standards. This approach simplifies audit prep for organizations facing overlapping requirements. When auditors can see mappings directly within the narrative, they can immediately relate the control to multiple obligations without separate spreadsheets. Consolidating duplicative evidence under one narrative saves time, reduces errors, and strengthens governance cohesion. In mature programs, these cross-framework mappings evolve into a control dictionary, a single authoritative source linking obligations, processes, and evidence. Testing and validation cadence turn narratives from static statements into living assurance mechanisms. Each narrative should specify not only what the control does, but also how often it's validated and by whom. Mapping review frequency, daily, monthly, or quarterly, to the control's risk level ensures proportional assurance. Documentation should include sample size, method, and outcomes of management testing. For example, compliance reviews a random 10% of access revocation tickets quarterly and logs results in the GRC tool. These records create a feedback loop where control effectiveness data influences future audits and risk scoring. If recurring failures appear, management should adjust frequency or ownership accordingly. Testing cadence proves that the control isn't just defined, it's continually confirmed to work. Peer review and continuous improvement elevate narrative quality over time. A biannual peer review of control statements using a scoring rubric for clarity and completeness provides fresh eyes and uncovers inconsistencies. Criteria such as clarity of actor, accuracy of frequency, and sufficiency of evidence references can be scored numerically to track improvement trends. Over several audit cycles, metrics like average narrative clarity score or number of auditor clarification requests demonstrate measurable progress. Feedback gathered during audits should feed directly into the peer review cycle and training updates, ensuring that every audit experience refines the organization's documentation maturity. Automated controls deserve narratives just as clear as manual ones. When a system performs a task automatically, the narrative should explain what triggers it, what it checks, and how exceptions are managed. For example, the endpoint management system automatically enforces disk encryption at device enrollment. Non-compliant devices generate alerts in the security console, reviewed daily by the desktop support lead. The statement clarifies both automation and oversight, showing that humans still validate system performance. Narratives should also point to logs, dashboards, or job reports, proving that automation runs consistently. This balance of machine precision and human accountability is at the heart of strong, modern control documentation. Narrative inflation is a subtle but damaging problem when control descriptions grow bloated with redundant phrasing or overlapping scope. Some teams try to impress auditors with exhaustive detail, but excessive wording obscures key facts. A good rule is one narrative per discrete control, written in clear, business-like language. Detailed procedures belong in SOPs or runbooks, not in the control statement itself. Governance reviews should prune duplication and enforce concise clarity. Streamlined narratives improve readability, making it easier for auditors and new employees alike to understand what matters most, who does what, how often, and how evidence is captured. Training control owners to write high-quality narratives is one of the best investments an organization can make. Workshops comparing weak and strong examples teach by contrast. Participants immediately see how phrasing changes auditability. Templates should be distributed with step-by-step instructions for defining actor, action, object, and frequency. Real audit feedback should be used as case studies, demonstrating how vague wording led to findings and how improved narratives resolve them. Over time, this creates a culture where narrative writing is viewed as a professional skill, not administrative work. Control owners who understand their role in evidence storytelling help auditors verify more efficiently and reinforce internal accountability. Tooling and automation transform narrative governance from a spreadsheet exercise into a dynamic workflow. Modern governance, risk, and compliance (GRC) systems can enforce narrative templates automatically, requiring specific fields for frequency, evidence ID, and control type before allowing publication. Metadata tags capture framework mappings, owners, and review cycles. Dashboards display narrative age and last update, prompting reviews when thresholds are exceeded. Workflow approvals require dual authorization, maintaining a trail of accountability. These automated checkpoints not only maintain structure, but also provide audit-ready transparency on narrative health. Governance systems turn control documentation into a living, self-auditing organism. Evidence expectations for control narratives go far beyond the text itself. A complete narrative library must include version-controlled approvals, test results, and crosswalk references. Each control should have an attestation log, proof that the owner has reviewed and confirmed accuracy during the latest cycle. Sampling notes show auditors that the control was not only described, but executed and validated. Testing outcomes and risk scores provide context for how each control performs over time. A narrative without supporting evidence is merely a claim. A narrative tied to artifacts, reviews, and attestations becomes proof of reliability. Common pitfalls in narrative management follow predictable patterns. Ownership fields go missing or contradict other documents. Timeframes vary between control libraries and auditor samples. And conflicting statements appear in procedure manuals versus audit repositories. These inconsistencies confuse reviewers and trigger unnecessary evidence requests. Regular QA reviews, enforced templates, and mandatory peer checks correct these errors before audit season. Governance templates standardize terminology and structure, preventing drift and maintaining alignment with the trust services criteria. The goal is uniformity, not rigidity, but coherence, so that every control narrative tells the same kind of story with the same language of accountability. Narrative maturity follows the same evolutionary curve as other SOC2 disciplines. Stage 1 is ad hoc. Controls exist, but documentation varies in tone, structure, and completeness. Stage 2 introduces standardized templates and consistent phrasing. Stage 3 integrates narratives with evidence systems, allowing automatic linkage to logs or dashboards. The final stage is self-validating narratives, where GRC tools automatically confirm control activity through API connections, updating status in real time. Continuous improvement becomes the norm, and cross-framework harmony ensures that one well-written narrative satisfies multiple standards simultaneously. Maturity here means predictability. Auditors know what they will find, and organizations know what they will need. Metrics and reporting give leadership insight into the health of narrative quality. Track the percentage of narratives meeting established quality standards, the number of auditor clarification requests per control, and the average time since last update. Over multiple audit cycles, trends show whether writing workshops and peer reviews are working. A decline in audit questions or repeat findings is direct evidence of progress. Dashboards summarizing narrative readiness help compliance teams prioritize reviews before renewals or major changes. In essence, measurement turns control documentation into a continuous improvement process, a hallmark of mature governance. In conclusion, strong control narratives transform compliance from a defensive exercise into a proactive expression of operational integrity. They define ownership, frequency, and evidence with the precision of engineering documentation, while remaining clear enough for auditors and executives to understand at a glance. The payoff is immediate: smoother audits, fewer findings, faster reviews, and higher confidence across all stakeholders. Clarity replaces ambiguity. Accountability replaces assumption. When organizations master narrative discipline, they tell a consistent, credible story, one that stands on evidence, survives scrutiny, and sets the stage for the next chapter in Type 2 audit readiness and continuous assurance.